the wolves of war. Welcome back to Mysteries Channel. Thank you for clicking on the video. Today we're going to go over werewolves. That's right, it's October, people. Let's go over something that seems super creepy, and when you get into it, it's pretty damn creepy. Now, many historians will tell you that werewolf mythology popped up in the Middle Ages, but that is completely untrue. And different cultures around the world have this evil, demonic, warlike being that stalks people. You guys know what I think. I think a lot of mythology, a lot of ancient legends are tied to something that happened that was of historical significance. So let's find out what we can figure out by looking at the ancient history of werewolves. Were they real? Did they ever exist? Is this based on something that actually occurred? Today we find out. This, my friends, is the history of the wolves of war. We'll start with the Dacians in ancient times. They were known as the Getae to the Greeks and the Dacians by the Romans. Many ancient historians use these two names interchangeably in the times following, which created a lot of confusion. Many thinking that these were two separate and distinct tribes of people, but in reality, they were one. Some people to this day think that possibly the Dacians were a tribe of Thracians that lived in the Balkan mountain range, and that the Getae were a tribe of Thracians that lived in the Carpathian mountain range. But in reality, these were all one people that united under a flag and a language. The language that they spoke is believed to have been an Indo-European language. But it's really hard to know because the entire language died out by the 7th century. It is said that there is still one stone inscription written in Dacian. However, through my searching, and I searched and searched and searched, I couldn't find it anywhere, so I really don't even know if that's true. But I do know that there were a couple of historians later on in Greek and Roman histories that tried to preserve the last few fragments of their language, and here you see them. In ancient times, the Dacians were considered an ancient people. They were really a mashup of two different groups. They lived on the outskirts of society at the time in a self-imposed exile. They were not interested in the Greek or Roman way of life, and they were fierce outliers. They were feared by all. In the US, you hear stories about like backwoods communities. Many times they're mountain communities where people are standoffish, maybe sometimes even a little bit strange. These people usually aren't a fan of outsiders, and from what I've read, the Dacians seem to be that type of people. They were very much looked at in the same way by the city dwellers and counterparts that lived to the south of them. Now, the two different cultures that mashed up to form them were two very separate cultures, and it's a very interesting mashup. Basically, it's the Germanic Celts who were named the Bastarnae. They might have been Gauls at that point in time. I'm not 100% sure. They were from the west, the Iranian Scythians from the east. Now, not much fossil evidence is left behind by these people because both cultures cremated their dead in these earth pits. These cultures formed both permanent settlements and also some semi-nomadic ones. There is a lot of evidence of their cultures mixing together and both having a very heavy influence on the traditions that were preserved later on. Now, even before these two cultures got here, there are artifacts of wolf totems and figurines dating back before the Vinca culture. Some that we've found so far, including a wolf mask, date to about 5700 BCE. I guarantee you this goes back even further than that. This stuff here, werewolves are ancient. Now back to the Dacians. These people were warriors, and I mean warriors. And it was weird because they weren't just warriors, they were also farmers. But as warriors, they held one animal above all else. As warriors, the Dacians lay under the sign of the wolf, their battle flag. They acted like real wolves against their enemies during battles. The Latin poet Ovid, after coming into contact with the Dacians, stated, "And if I look at the people, they are crueler than wolves." He also comments that they have wild voices and that their faces remind him of Mars, the god of war. This is, in fact, because they studied wolves. They studied how they hunt. They would mimic them in military pursuits. They would organize their assault detachments similar to that of packs of wolves. They also used snake venom to give their arrows high odds of eliminating the enemy. Each Dacian had 3 basic weapons. They had a horse, their platform for fighting. They had a bow and poisoned arrows, and they had a knife, making them a very versatile warrior. They may have been like the original commandos, and they left a very distinct impression on those who came into contact with them. The many referred to them as barbarians. They were wild, completely wild, maniacs even, and they were utterly ready to face death. Now, Herodotus, when he speaks of the Dacians, he combines the Dacians and the Thracians into one group, and he says that this group is the second largest populated group on Earth, only behind the Indian populations. He also claims that if these people could ever just follow one ruler or even get along with themselves, they would be the most powerful nation on earth. Now, at this point in time in the world, Ares is the god of worship. Depends on where you are. Every culture in that area has its own name that they're going to call him. Ares is the god of war and the god of lightning. The Dacians, they worship the god they call Zamolxis or Zamolx, I'm not sure. He is also the god of lightning and the god of war, and he is worshipped in caves and high mountains. He is their version of Ares, and I think that they take the worship of him quite seriously. Now, in this farming warlike culture, they carried out military rituals to their warrior god that involved human and military sacrifice. The Dacians used a method of communication with their god called the messengers of Zamolxis. And in this ritual, encoded messages were usually sent both to their god and also to the Dacians themselves. They did this to support the morale of the army and also to ask for military guidance. These messenger rituals of Zamolxis, I'm not sure how to say it, were held every 4 years in the presence of a priest. Very similar to the Grand Druid of the Celts, both in terms of education and the influence that they held upon the people. Herodotus tells us that the Dacians, or the Getae in his words, were the bravest and the most law-abiding of all Thracians, and that the Dacians believed that they were immortal, and when a man perishes, he goes to be with Zamolxis. Dacian rituals to Zamolxis were held in high mountain caves. In the earliest messenger rituals, human sacrifice was definitely present. This messenger would be given a message to give their gods. The messenger would be brought up to a very high rock, and below him there would be people holding 3 spears. The messenger would then be thrown off the rock to land on these spears, and if he died, it was considered that his soul went to the god Zamolxis to send their message to him. The last utterances of this sacrificed warrior would be the message from Zamolxis to his followers. If he survived, however, he was accused of being a bad person. He was unworthy of meeting their god. Many other militaristic civilizations had survival rituals, one being the Spartans, but the Dacians, they were going further. They were sacrificing warriors. The Spartans, they would sacrifice wolves, but they would never sacrifice a warrior. To them, the warrior only died in battle. The ritual that they had that was most revered was said to be performed by a secret brotherhood of Dacian warriors. This ritual was said to have turned warriors into wolves, and not just metaphorically, physically. Reading through Herodotus, I think he actually names this secret brotherhood or society, and he calls it the Nori. Now, when Herodotus talks about the Nori, he describes them as a tribe of people that lived beyond the Scythian farmers, in the wilds of the untamed lands. He states that once a year, each of the Nori became a wolf for a few days, only to return to their previous form. Herodotus himself does not believe the tale, but he says those that tell this tale swear on everything that it is true. They were also known to use tattooing in accordance with military rank, possibly expounding on the tattoos once rank was achieved. They made military oaths, and they sealed them by drinking the water from the Danube, the river that they considered most sacred, swearing that they would always come back as conquerors. Now, the wolf, it was a very important military symbol for many ancient cultures in ancient times. Many cultures believed the wolf to be the protector of the state. The Dacians, however, used the wolf to symbolize the people themselves. They were the wolves. And it is believed that the word Dacian itself may translate to who are like wolves. The Dacian people, they flew a flag, and on that flag there was a head of a wolf and the snake body. The Dacian wolf was considered a god, and each Dacian who was able to fight answered the call of the sacred wolf, symbolized by that battle flag. Accounts of Dacians on the battlefield are terrifying. When the Dacians were fighting, they were said to be in a trance or even possessed in a way. They would attack in wild, primal ways, as if they had lost all of their humanity. Now, there is an account of a Dacian who goes primal on the battlefield. This battle is taking place between the Dacians and the Hellenes to the south. And what is recorded is kind of shocking. Basically, while the battle has already been going on for some time, this man hits this level of absolute mania. He ends up taking his shield and eating the entire thing in front of everyone as this battle is raging around him. Once his shield is gone, he drops his weapons and goes completely mad, attacking soldiers by biting and ripping off limbs. I mean, honestly, it sounds like the Viking berserkers, doesn't it? The account that talks about this warrior says that he killed many people this way. Some believe that the Dacians accomplished this primal fervor through the use of certain plants that they used to brew their mead. It may very well be so, let's be honest. Ancient people used different things as stimulants during rituals, and it seems like the further back you go in time, rituals were associated with everything. These people might never have been sober, I'm just saying. And on top of that, militaries around the world, I'm willing to bet to this very day, are 100% okay with drugging soldiers to accomplish their goals. I mean, we've heard about it plenty of times. Now, going back to this flag that they flew, looks like a clue, doesn't it? I mean, come on, look at that right there. It's a serpent wolf, an ancient visual aid to denote broad understanding. Typically, a human head would be on top of that serpent or fish body, but these guys, they wanted to make it plain and clear to anybody that saw them or their flag that they were in the broad understanding of acting like beasts. Now, they have another ritual that's super important to them, and it also earned them the nickname of the walkers through smoke. But I wonder that if after these battles, if they had a smoke ritual to maybe, I don't know, cleanse the spirit of the wolf off of them, to release the possession of this spirit, because I mean, let's be honest, it sounds like they were possessed, right? If you're ever able to actually rip limbs or attack somebody with your mouth, I'm gonna say that it's time to get a cleansing. But I do find it interesting that this is the very region that is connected with the werewolf and vampire mythologies, and it is said that Vlad the Impaler was a vampire. So maybe him spiking people in the fields was kind of like a slap into the face to the wolf cult communities around him. I'm just saying, I have to look more into it, but maybe, right? And many of you guys know that there is a werewolf connection to World War II. Let's be real. Hitler was drawn to the occult. Hitler had an elite group of men named the Werewolves, and these were not just people that were versed in military and special forces tactics. They were his top spies. They were his top of the top men that he went to get shit done, if you know what I mean. And he also had a reinforced bunker that he called the Wolf's Lair. In fact, it's the very bunker that he was almost assassinated in. And it's not just Hitler. Wolf terminology and tactics are still used in militaries around the world to this very day. Now, I didn't have time to go look at all the military's branches, but I can tell you that each branch of U.S. military has wolf symbology associated with them in some instance or another. Here are some of the patches that they use. They also have tactics that are named after wolves in many instances. And it's interesting because some of them are naval, some of them are aerial. And of course, wolves are typically on terrain. So it's interesting that even those branches use wolf terminology to express militaristic tactics. So here's my question. Were werewolves actually an ancient military cult who, through human sacrifice, ritual practice, and drug use, were able to create horrific situations so barbaric it creates a lasting memory? And do militaries today yearn to accomplish that primal, ferocious barbarity by using symbology and tactics used by this ancient cult? I mean, let's be real. We talk about these ancient secret societies that even Herodotus can speak of, but there are still societies tied to wolves, werewolves, and wolf lore to this very day. What do you think? Is it possible? Is this what this whole werewolf deal is all about? And if that's what werewolves are all about, what the hell are vampires about? Am I right? Anyway, you guys have yourselves a very great day.